Thank you for having me here today. I particularly want to thank Anne-Marie Fisher for really, this is her baby, so she really tried hard to bring all of us together, putting together the community consultation sessions. And I also want to thank Christine and Stephanie as well. And I look forward to talking to you all after this, but I think this is a great gathering that we have here. And before I begin, I do want to see a raise of hands. How many of you right now that are participating in this are from Fanshawe College? One hand. Two. Okay. How many of you are part of the local nonprofit sector or local agencies? Great. How many of you are part of Western? Wow. And how many of you are part of the private sector representing a business? Okay. Well, the reason why I wanted to know that is because I wanted to see how diverse this room really is. I think based on the show of hands, there seems to be a lack of participants in this event from the private sector and from Fanshawe College. And I think, before I keep going, I do want to say that the number of criticisms that I'll be giving you and the provocative talk that I'll be giving you will truly be provocative. And I don't mean to offend anyone. I'm simply talking about the perceptions that exist in London and the perceptions that people have towards the various institutions. So please bear with me. I am just trying to open a can of worms. But what I'm talking about is this whole notion of student talent retention in London and whose responsibility is it. I think before we even touch that, we need to really sit back and even think about why talent retention is even important. Why are we even having this conversation? Why are we just killing ourselves over making sure that students at Western and at Fanshawe are staying in London? And the answer to that is one of basically economics. Something I'm particularly passionate about as well. And it has to do with the fact that over the past 15 years, since the dawn of the 21st century in London, the baby boomers have been obviously aging and the retirement population has been increasing. Our labor force in London has been shrinking. And there are stats that between 85 to 86% of students leave Western when they graduate. So the issue is that with the city's working age population becoming progressively older and the labor force becoming progressively smaller, London is left with fewer people paying taxes and more people in need of government services. And the stats show that from 2007 until 2013, there is about a 39, I may be completely wrong on this, but it's between 29 and 39. It's the 2 or the 3 that I'm mixing up here. But large amount of people have been on social assistance. And that is because of economic structural shifts that we've been seeing from manufacturing plants relocating to other jurisdictions, from businesses closing down, and obviously some people being discouraged from continuing their work. And then there are students who are also staying in school longer because they realize that the labor market right now is a challenging one to enter. They need more skills. And once they do develop that, unfortunately, it seems to be the case, at least with the stats that are coming out with Western, that they are leaving the city, which again means that our labor force obviously needs to be dependent on that young talent, aside from immigration as well being super important. But it really means that we need to work on making sure, whether it's the private sector, whether it's our post-secondary institutions, whether it's our local agencies, our local government, our nonprofit sector, we really need to make sure and we really need to understand that this issue of our labor force shrinkage is one that actually has consequences for every single one of us. So further exploration basically shows that the population of 25 to 44 age group in London has decreased by 11,500 people between 2002 and 2014, while the population of the 55 to 64 and 65 plus age groups have increased by 28,500 and 27,700 people respectively. So now that we understand why this is a critical issue, we need to understand whose responsibility is it to retain this young talent. And I do want to say that although I'm talking about student retention, immigration is extremely, extremely important as well to growing our labor force and making sure that we do have that large enough tax base that can be contributing members of our community. So, the responsibility. Oftentimes in this city, we tend to sit around and not take responsibility on ourselves and actually put the responsibility and the onus on other people. If we are members of the nonprofit sector or our local agencies, we tend to say, well, it's Western's responsibility to retain our young talent. Well, that simply isn't true. In fact, I think with Keith's presentation, we've seen that Western is doing a number. I don't even know how to name all of them because it's just too many. But they are doing a wonderful job. They're absolutely in the right direction in terms of engaging students in the community. And all that needs to happen is further acceleration of integrating students within the community. But it is not just one stakeholder or one institution that is responsible for retaining our talent. Again, this is a community-wide effort, which means that not only our local government is responsible, but our private sector is responsible as well. Our private sector can no longer expect students to have 3 to 5 years of experience and somehow get a job when they come out of post-secondary institutions. You have to recognize that if, again, our labor force is continuously shrinking and you are not willing to train our young people, then that's going to leave a problem, and it's going to have huge consequences and implications for the local government to be able to provide the services that our private sector ultimately needs. So the responsibility is, again, community-wide. Yes, Western is responsible, but yes, our local government is responsible, so are our nonprofit sectors, so are our economic development agencies, and so are our local businesses. But there seems to have been a trend. This sort of talk of talent retention isn't the first time that we've had it. I know that there is one member of council sitting here, Harold Usher, and I think he would remember that back in 2005, we had something called the Creative City Task Force. It was chaired by Controller Gord Hume, and the idea was basically to provide 87 recommendations to the City of London on how we can retain our talent here. I have no idea how many of those recommendations were implemented, but there are still some of the ideas that we could implement. There's nothing new to this sort of conversation. The City of London was asked to provide student ambassadors. I'm a student myself, and I'm a proud Western and King student.
That's just the weather siren.
Okay.
It goes off every Friday.
That's all right. That's all right. I thought my time was over. Time's up. We gotta go. One of the recommendations, which actually two of the recommendations that I found interesting, which I still haven't seen. Again, I'm going to work my way down because this is the local government aspect of the responsibility. So one of the responsibilities was finding student ambassadors. We have a generation, whether it's Generation Y, X, Z, millennials, who are all about this notion of a buzz. The way they shop, the way they interact, it's a digital generation. It's completely different than the generations before. So the way you want to interact with this generation is also going to be different. And so student ambassadors, which was one of the recommendations in the Creative City Task Force, which I have yet to see, is really important. I know that a lot of the people my age on a weekend, go to downtown, they hit up the bars, they go to nightclubs, they like to spend time and have that experience of the nightlife. And believe it or not, what a lot of the clubs and a lot of the businesses downtown do is they actually have promotion companies where they hire young people. And the reason why they do that, and the reason why there's always lineups happening in front of bars and nightclubs in downtown, is because those promotion ambassadors of sorts have fairly large student networks, and they're able to actually get the word out to a fairly large percentage of the student population. The reason why that recommendation made back in 2005 is so important is because we can really leverage those students who have fairly large networks, be able to hire them, and really promote and talk up the city. Talk about job opportunities, talk about volunteer opportunities, talk about the fantastic work that the planning department is doing on light rail transit and the fact that we're going to have rapid transit now in the city. Talk about the fact that we're having this Back to the River initiative where people are going to be going back to the river. Our Thames River is going to be finally developed into a place where we can literally live, work, and play. Talk about the Dundas Flex Street, the fact that we're closing Dundas Street and making it ready for festivals, for a destination for people to sit on patios during the summer and springtime and fall, as a matter of fact. I mean, that's why student ambassadors are so important. So that's one thing. The other one was a recommendation made in the Creative City Task Force called the London Credit. The London Credit was made so that students and universities and colleges can take this credit. I mean, it's up to the institution for it to be voluntary or mandatory. But the point behind the London Credit was that students would actually receive a university credit for either being being part of a co-op or an internship or working with a community organization, actually having a stake in some of the projects that some of the community organizations or local agencies and economic development agencies are doing. And the London Credit I found was super, super interesting. I have yet to see it. So I'm going to be provocative, but we have made numerous plans from a local government perspective since 2005. Where is the execution? Where is the action? It's the action that's lacking in this community. It's the fact that we are not being aggressive enough, and again, I'm just talking about local government right now, in terms of willing to brand our city, willing to do what's necessary to retain our talent. Because if we want to pursue that light rail transit project, if we want to fund the Thames River project, we can't do it when our tax base continues to shrink. We just can't. Another important thing, this is one that's more cultural. We need to start to build a culture of shared values, finding common ground, making sure that we're collaborating with one another. My time's coming up. I didn't. See, when I start talking, I can't even keep up with the time. I'll be very quick. Making sure that we're reflecting on our own personal values. We have a pretty arrogant and selfish and egoistical sort of nature when it comes to London. We have different people, different agencies, different businesses, different economic, whatever. I mean, it's cross-sectoral. And we're pretty arrogant. We're arrogant when a student walks in front of our door and we say, oh, this person doesn't have any experience. He doesn't know that person and that person. He doesn't have enough social capital. And that can't happen anymore. We gotta open the doors to young people. There are so many young people sitting, not only in this room, but outside of this room, who are so passionate about creating their own businesses, becoming entrepreneurs, willing to actually take ownership on a lot of the projects that the city is doing. But why are we not opening the doors to them? Why are we not valuing them? And I know we are. I know we're doing that. But again, I'm going to be provocative and say that we got to be more aggressive. We got to be more action-oriented. We got to keep pushing. So we need that culture where we synchronize our values, we synchronize our common projects, we come together as a community, because every single city that has been successful has realized that when you do a strategic plan, when you want to have your strategic priorities and you want to work on big projects, you got to make sure that you're pulling in all the resources. If you're looking for external funding, don't try to compete with one another for external funding. Come together and build a better case to get those external resources. So what I'm trying to say is that we can only retain our talent. We can only truly retain our talent once we realize that we have to wake up every single morning, not trying to grow our organization's numbers, not trying to brag about the things that we're doing, but really we're trying to make the city a better place. That we're saying we're going to wake up and we're going to do what we can to ensure that we're retaining the talent in London, that we're bringing immigrants to London, that we're creating the physical attributes necessary to make the city an attractive place. We got to be forward thinking. Last thing, I promise, I really got to talk about this because it's super important. Our economy is changing and will be changing in the next 10 years. We are going to move towards an economy that's heavily automated, that requires artificial intelligence and robotics. And that's going to create more labor force challenges, believe me. It's going to discourage more people from working, and it's going to put more pressure on young people to develop those skills. Aside from that, there's a huge benefit for the university to partner with industry. Competition no longer comes within an industry. It comes from elsewhere. Not having domain experts in fields such as synthetic biology, nanotechnology, and robotics makes most companies basically not aware of the threats that they will be facing. We are in a global economy. Universities, though, they have the experts. As a result of decades of government investment in basic research in fields such as computing, medicine, sensors, artificial intelligence, digital manufacturing, robotics, nanomaterials, and synthetic biology, they have an abundance of talent and intellectual property. This is a gold mine for industry. Businesses that are under siege or are trying to expand into new markets usually look to buy startup companies and take what they need. What better place is there to acquire intellectual property and talent than the universities after all? Uber, believe it or not, wanted to urgently build self-driving cars, so it lured away more than 40 researchers from Carnegie Mellon University in January this year. Being nice or ethical didn't matter to Uber, ironic enough. It took what it wanted and then came back to the universities with a relatively small consolation prize of $5.5 million for a robotics faculty chair and 3 fellowships. We will see much more of this in the next few years, believe me. If universities don't cooperate, businesses will take whatever they can get because they are desperate. In order to keep its researchers, academia will need to put aside its historical aversion to working with industry. And not only that, to providing students with co-ops, mentorship, extensive mentorship, to be able to get them ready for what the industry ultimately needs. It's just changing. We're not in the Industrial Revolution anymore. Things are really picking up. I promise, just one more minute. It's just so crucial for me to talk about this. Last one. Stanford University figured this out a long time ago. Its faculty members are encouraged to work closely with industry, and these collaborations have led to innovation on a grand scale in Silicon Valley with formation of companies such as Google, Hewlett-Packard, and Cisco Systems. This, in turn, has led to an endowment of more than $20 billion through the donation that its billionaire alumni have given to it. So the important part of partnering with industry here is that, and I'm not just talking about the industry in London, but actually working with our local economic development agencies and actually bringing industry into London, is that one, we could bring head offices, which attracts a lot of young people. But at the same time, it provides an abundance of opportunities for researchers, for academics, for the university to not rely on government funding for basic research anymore. It's a huge opportunity for students, for faculty members, for the university, and it's a collaborative effort. It means that we have to work together to get there. It doesn't mean that we just say, well, if the university is going to partner with industry, then why am I going to get involved if I'm a local economic development agency or if I'm the local government? It means that this community will never, ever be able to succeed until every single one of us recognizes that doing what's best for others and being there for others, whether it's young, old, professional, non-professional, will ultimately benefit us. And I'll wrap it up with that.